Hey, it's Jack Maxwell. Welcome to the High Road Live Q&A. I have something I wanted to read you because, as you know, we start with what I learned this week about CBD. And, well, there's a couple of things. We'll start with that. So this is your time, by the way. It's a half an hour of you asking me questions or comments that you want to make about your journey. If you even have one through CBD or medicinal THC, I have one based on I can't find this article now, based on my journey through cancer and chemo. So there are a couple of articles that I wanted to read you. One of them was longtime actor William Shatner is now using CBD and getting relief from it. And of course, I have to give you the source. I can't just make stuff up. That's from the Independent, which is out of the UK. And also, there was one about about Iowa changing the rules, and also, again, out of the Independent, and you can look them up. I'm not a journalist. I can't verify how credible they are or not, which, of course, always considered the source. But they're saying that some coronavirus victims, I guess there's no other word, patients, are getting some kind of relief from medicinal cannabis. I can't vouch for that. I'd never make that claim. But you'll hear more and more as time goes on that the discovery of what CBD and THC is good for is, well, quite amazing, I guess. There's no other way to say it. Only because, and here's why I say it's amazing, and I've said this before, only because before we thought it was bad. So when it's below the zero, as I like to say, and it's really bad for you, so they will tell you, and then you discover it's not so bad for you, on top of there are some ways it's very good for you, well, then that's why it becomes amazing. Because who said it was bad in the first place? Why are these people telling us it's so horrible? And by the way, I was never a druggie really growing up. I was never one to experiment because my father was a drug addict. I say this all the time, and I didn't want to get caught up in that cycle. And I promised my mother I wouldn't. It's that simple. Now, I know that medicinal cannabis, THC, marijuana, pot, whatever you want to call it, is not the same as heroin and cocaine and meth and things like that, clearly. But so many people who would never use it are trying it because of CBD, not realizing maybe it's the same thing. Now, of course, cannabis grows as both hemp and marijuana, but it's similar to the same thing because if it has 0.3% THC or more, then it's marijuana, but it's the same, basically the same plant. So I know someone who was using CBD and getting relief, found out it was part of this cannabis thing, which is also marijuana, it's hemp, there's no distinction, it's all the same, and they stopped using it because their pastor told them it was bad, and God won't want you to, and you're ruining your temple, that is your body. I just don't understand it. If there is something you can do to relieve pain, why wouldn't you? You know, I saw this again, and it comes up every so often, and I love to remember it. I like to keep it close to my heart. The saying is, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And it's a Zen saying, a Buddhist saying, because we're all going to feel pain, the loss of a loved one, or broken leg, or everything in between, twisted ankle, anything, whatever you could think of. We will feel pain. We are emotional and sensitive beings. And so we hurt when we get bad news or physical pain. Something happens to us. We break a bone or get in a car accident or wake up on the wrong side of the bed with your back hurts, whatever. But to suffer long term, you don't have to. So emotionally, people work on that. The Dalai Lama was talking about how when he lost his mother, he misses her to this day, and you know how in a way it was sad, but in some way it was freeing. And I don't want to misquote him, but that he didn't want to suffer. He wanted to honor her by being alive and by being happy. It's actually called the Art of Happiness. He has I was listening to a CD collection years ago, and I still remember that. So on the physical side of that, the equivalent, I think, would be if you get hurt physically and there's something you could do to not feel that pain, to not suffer anymore, why wouldn't you? Or why wouldn't people allow you to do that without judgment? And it's our fear of judgment sometimes that stops us from finding our true path. Not that I'm some great philosopher or even smart for that matter, but I really believe fear stops us from becoming who we know we can become. It's odd, people take opiates and they have their place, but they're not long term. And I know why people take them, and I know why people get addicted, because it feels good to not feel bad, to not be suffering in pain with whatever the affliction is. And then, of course, by their nature, because opiates do that, you can get addicted. With cannabis, I don't know. There'll be people telling you can get addicted to cannabis, of course. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. Certainly not on the level of opiate addiction. I've said this before. Maybe you're hearing it for the first time, but as far as I know, it's completely true. No one has died from a cannabis overdose. Ever. They have from opiate overdoses, of course. I know someone very close to me. I won't go into any more details because it's still very painful for the family. A young man died from an accidental opiate overdose. And I don't know why he was taking it, or whether he knew he was, or if he knew what he was taking. Tragic story either way. Maybe he was in pain. I don't know. But if you are in pain, please be open-minded to the possibilities. Talk to people who use these things, whether it's an opiate or cannabis or a salve, or it doesn't even have to be cannabis related. I just would like to see people who are suffering to not discount the possibilities of what might be that's out there because you think someone's going to judge you, whether it's your pastor, in the case of the story I just told, or a friend or a family member. I grew up somewhat poor, my sister and I. We didn't have a father, just a mother, and she had a bunch of different jobs to try to raise us. And we grew up in a neighborhood that was very poor. And it felt terrible to go to other neighborhoods and visit people and have us be judged for where we came from. I mean, and we were little kids. That's why I just can't stand racism, people judging you based on your skin. I was a victim of people judging me based on my economic condition, or which infuriated me, that of my mother's. And I wouldn't want that. So I don't want to judge other people. So with whatever it is you're doing to be happy, I think it's okay if that matters at all. And this story tonight, coming to you at the top of the hour, is about a Marine. His name is Stephen Cochran. Yusuf, my producer, could you please put that up there? This is the thumbnail, as we call it. Not his name, but the thumbnail. You'll have to click on that, either on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching this, right at the top of the hour, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. And you will hear his story. He was a singer-songwriter in the country music genre. Never thought he'd be a Marine, but then 9/11 happened, and he had this wonderful patriotic call to serve his country. So he goes, and it's like a Hollywood story. He's on his way home from where he was stationed to the airport, and he gets thrown out of the truck. There was a big hole dug in the ground. It wasn't even an IED or an explosive device or an RPG. Just they hit a big hole that was dug and covered. And because it was covered up, they didn't see it. The truck goes down, he goes up, shatters his back, L1 to L5. They have to put a cement epoxy in there to hold his back together. And then you'll see what he was on as far as opiates. Something for pain, something for sleep, something for depression, because he couldn't sleep, because he was in pain. And I will let him tell you the details. But he attempted suicide because the pain was so great. And then he tried cannabis. maybe it's not for everybody, but in this case, it's a wonderful story of how it helped him not only with his pain and his depression and his lack of being able to sleep. It drove him to help other veterans who are killing themselves still at an alarming rate. It's called the Stop 22 Tour, because 22 either active or retired service members a day are killing themselves. He thinks it's higher than that. I was told the number went down, but he says there are a lot of unreported cases, and I believe him. He was over there, and it's so soul crushing to think that we don't take care of them when they come home. We don't give them what they need. And he had to fight for a long time to get people to understand not only about cannabis, but about the scourge that is American service members, men and women, going to a foreign land, defending our country and our freedoms, and coming home in pieces if they come home at all. And it's a really inspiring story. It's amazing. It's coming up in about, I guess, 19 minutes or so, something like that. In the meantime, let's get to some questions, some comments, and can't find that article about Iowa, but it was very interesting about what they're doing there. Okay, if anyone's here, they want to talk about anything, give me your experiences as well. I want to hear from you. You know, a lot of times it's questions, and I can't answer them all because I'm not a qualified medical professional, and they're mostly along those lines, which I completely understand. I had the same questions. I had pain from chemo. I still had cancer, and I didn't want to take opiates. And I was given something called Tramadol, which is a very mild opiate compared to hydrocodone or Vicodin or things like that. Hydrocodone is the generic form of Vicodin. And so I went to a pain specialist, and then I started a whole new journey, a discovery about CBD and medicinal THC, and how it really changed the way I look at things, because I resisted it at first. Imagine that. I was quick to grab the opiates, even though there was the mild one. And I'm not pulling your leg. The CBD worked better. The THC, the medicinal THC, in small amounts, the ratio was much greater. CBD to THC worked better. It's amazing. And so I stopped taking Tramadol almost immediately. And I knew then that there's so many people with the same story, on the same path. That's why we call the show The High Road. And we try to bring you inspiring stories of people who might not have been users otherwise. Whether they were or not, that's okay, because I don't judge that. But even for the people who were using recreationally, they've discovered the medicinal uses, and it's a whole new ball game. Diana Lynn Barhorst. Hi, Diana. Do you still have pain, Jack? A little bit, but it's the pain of getting old, really. And I don't know. I try to stay in some kind of shape, but I still have disc problems. See, the medicinal cannabis does not fuse your back. It doesn't help you with that. But the CBD at night helps me sleep. And thankfully, I don't experience a lot of anxiety, although I know people who do. But for the pain, it dulls the pain without dulling the senses. See, that's what's amazing to me. So many times on medication, and not just on opiates, you were told to not operate heavy machinery, right? Comedians have talked about that for years. Sure, I'm going to take some stuff and go drive a tractor down the freeway. All kind of riffs about that. Of course, you're not going to operate heavy machinery. Very few of us do. But it means don't drive a car or don't whatever, because you might be affected. And with CBD, you know, I've said it, and it's an oversimplification, but it's more for your body, not your head. So your head stays clear, and your body attains a place when it's the right ratio and the right strain, depending on how you receive it, attains homeostasis, and then it can heal itself, and then you feel better. It's really amazing for me, and that's the only reason I want to share that. And that's why I did the show, The High Road. We go all over the place, actually. We go upcoming episodes. We go to Las Vegas, where there's a cannabis dinner. This chef, Crystal, she's great. She cooks with CBD and THC, which is something I never thought of. We also, very next week, Right here next week, same time, we'll be talking about a thing called Paint and Puff in Las Vegas. I'll let you use your imagination on that. But we go to Kentucky and Colorado and California. We started here in Arizona because this is where I am getting my chemo treatments, of which finally, I'm finished so far. But that's the nature of cancer. It can keep coming back. In the meantime, I'm just going to be happy and healthy and try to share my positivity and my story with you, whether you feel it's positive or not. And maybe you'll just see things a little differently. And it's not that I want you to. I'm just bringing you what I've learned. That's all. Amy Hull says, my husband uses CBD for the neuropathy in his feet. Yes, I had it in my back and my hip and my knee and my foot. It has been helping. Very happy that Illinois has legalized medical and recreational cannabis. Yes, thank you, Amy. From what I understand, Illinois was the very last state of the 11 to approve it for recreational use. So right now there are 33 states, I believe, that allow medicinal uses and 11 recreational, and which of course recreational and medicinal. And it's only moving in that direction, folks. So even if you're against it, maybe you come from a generation that was told it was bad by the generation before you, or you just never got into it, which is fine. It's okay. But you're going to hear more and more about it. And as we get older, me, for instance, I could have used it even before chemo and cancer. I probably wouldn't have, though. I would have just taken an aspirin and a leave, or got a back rub, or used some kind of arnica gel. It's been great for my back. But because I thought, oh, this is cancer, this is chemo, I have to be really open-minded to the possibilities here. And I knew there were going to be side effects from the chemo, and neuropathy was one of them. That's when I decided to give it a try. And it was wonderful. There's so many uses. We went to Sedona, and they use it in a massage. Went to a Native American healer named Rogelio, in the sweat lodge, in the tent, and just so many different people from so many different walks of life are now incorporating it. And just a few short years ago, it was illegal. All of it. Never mind marijuana or cannabis that has THC in it, greater than 0.3%. Even hemp was illegal. All of it. Imagine that. And that all happened starting in 1937 and then 1970. As I've said before, President Nixon schedules it as a class 1 drug, up there with heroin. That's crazy. And you couldn't research hemp, cannabis, marijuana. You couldn't. So we got way far behind in our understanding of the medicinal uses of it, which never should have happened. Thankfully, that's changing. And Arsenal says, do you still use CBD THC for pain that you have? And if so, how? Vape, gummies, oils, etc.? Yeah, I never wanted to rely. This probably goes a little deeper than we either have time for or that you're interested in. I never wanted to rely on anything. I didn't want to turn into my father. I never even wanted to get addicted to, Coke or Pepsi or and any particular thing. I mean, I have a sweet tooth, so I'm probably addicted to sugar. I love coffee. I have to drink it every day. Otherwise, I'm a blubbering fool first thing in the morning. I'm in slow motion. But, I even recreationally still is what I'm trying to say. I don't use it for that reason. It has to be for a reason to use it. And then I know I'll be okay if I'm using it for a reason, not just to get high. And again, if you do, that's fine. And it's legal in a lot of places. But to answer your question, not vape, although I've tried it. Generally speaking, oils, tinctures under the tongue or in the, just in the mouth, because you can measure it. And hopefully, if it's consistent quality, you'll know what you're taking. Also, I've tried gummies, and those seem to work as well. I have a couple of friends who recommended this particular gummy to me, and it was great. And I slept wonderfully. And I don't understand still in my own psychology. I didn't want to take it. And it was CBD with a tiny bit of THC, tiny bit. I think it was like 5-1 or even 10-1 ratio CBD to THC. And I just felt I was doing something wrong or bad because it was so ingrained into my brain. But I slept great. And I didn't feel groggy the next day. And I recommended it to someone, and they say, no, I take Ambien. Why? Nothing wrong with Ambien, by the way, if it works for you. But even they were saying it didn't work after a while, and they felt groggy the next day. Why would you not try this? Nah, man, I don't want to get hooked on that. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. You say you take Ambien every single night. Oh, yeah, otherwise I can't sleep. Okay, would you say you're hooked on it? Oh, I don't know, but I need it. Well, wait a minute. You don't want to try even CBD or THC? You don't even want to attempt to see? Because it certainly probably has less side effects, I guess, from what people tell me. Yeah, I'm trying to skirt this legally so I don't get sued by the makers of Ambien. I'm not saying it's horrible. I'm saying give cannabis a try if you don't like medicines, prescribed medicines. And I'm working on him. I think he's probably going to try it eventually because of what it does for me. Amanda Evans, cannabis enhances the senses for some, and in a lot of cases, it enhances anxiety and pain. Also can cause insomnia. Well, if that's your experience or you've heard that, I will give you that point. But I've not heard that. I've not heard it ever causing an increase in anxiety and pain. CBD, especially. I don't understand. Or sleeplessness. I don't get it. Although I will say this, there is a sweet spot or a zone where it works perfectly well for you, depending on the amount of cannabinoid receptors you have in your body. Just looking at the clock here, all right, we got a few minutes still. And so when you find that area where it works best, then you'll have better results. But I've not heard negative results. The only thing I've heard is it didn't work for a particular person. And maybe they were taking too little or too much even. Like I said, oftentimes when you take CBD or CBD with medicinal THC, someone who knows about it, whether it's a doctor or medical provider or a friend who has lots of experience with that, will tell you to take less, not more. Not the same with opiates and other things. They'll say, well, try a higher dose, but less with CBD and THC, and sometimes it works. So I think maybe the case might be, and I'm just guessing here, that a person who experiences a little more anxiety or a little more pain does so maybe because they expect it to work, and it doesn't. So it adds a level of mental frustration. And so therefore they still feel pain, because if you expect relief and you feel the same amount of pain, it can feel like more pain, which causes anxiety and, of course, sleeplessness. Although I'm not a scientist or a medical professional, that's just a guess. So if it's happening for you, I would talk to a professional about that, or someone with a lot of experience. A lot of people out there, I know some people who've been using marijuana their whole lives, like from the 50s, the 60s, even before it became popular in the 60s and 70s, they were using it. Also, I saw a great documentary called Psychedelics, I believe. And we shut down all research on that. And I think there's going to be microdosing of with psychedelics, and that's going to help PTSD and pain and sleeplessness, things like that. If we could just get past the supposed immorality of it all and open our minds, I think we'll be better off. So I got to tell you about this guy again, Stephen Cochran. You are going to be so inspired by this, and I hope you'll click on the icon, because this will not run right into it. We can't do that on YouTube or Facebook. But if you find that and click on it, not only will you see our mini segment of the High Road, and these are solo segments that run 4, 5, 6 minutes, something like that, but it'll be followed by an interview with him today. Now, we filmed that a little while back, but just now we're going to talk to him, and he'll go into more details because it's such a great story. First of all, it's a sad and tragic one that he shattered his back and that he attempted suicide because he was in so much pain, had so much anxiety, couldn't sleep. It'll make you crazy. Absolutely. You know, it's funny. Stephen even references Reefer Madness about, oh, how it'll make you crazy. And there's no proof of that. But if you don't sleep, it'll make you crazy. Or if you're in too much pain, so many people take their lives. Why do you think 22 plus service members a day take their own lives? It's not just because they're just depressed or they have mental illness or the horrors of war. I'm sure all of that has something to do with it. But I would also guess it's from pain and sleeplessness, all of it, the combination. And Stephen was almost a statistic, but he bounced back, and now he's spending his life again with his love, his first love, music, and his family, of course. And he'll tell you a great story about how, in a way, a dog saved his life. Amazing. But he gives back now with the Stop 22 tour, and we're going to give you the links and the hashtags where you can look him up and hear his music and everything. It's really amazing. But not only did he go from below the zero, as I like to say, it was a hot mess. He healed himself with cannabis, and now he raises money for veterans who are on the verge, and he tries to help them, and he has saved lives. And as he said, and you'll hear him say this, what's more important, having a bunch of money in the bank, being rich, or being rich in character, knowing you've saved a life or more? And he has done that. It's really one of the most heartwarming, inspiring stories I've ever heard. And I hope you'll join me for that. You just click on that and you'll see our segment. We shot that in Kentucky, the back of his truck. I just met him that day. We've since become friends. And he is, every time I want to complain about something, I say, look what Stephen went through, Jack. Shut up. What are you talking about? This guy who went through so much, serving his country, shattering his back, L1 to L5, what he had to go through to get back, the surgeries, the cement epoxy, the opiates, the mental anguish, and then cannabis. And it's not, again, I will say this every time I talk to you about this, I will say it. I am not stating that it's some wonderful magic cure-all, magic beans, this potion that's going to solve all your problems. I'm not saying that at all. But from where it was, this demonized drug, supposedly, to where we know it is now, helping thousands and thousands of people through whatever it is, so many different things, and only because we have an endocannabinoid system in our bodies that responds to it. It's as simple as that. And for years, we couldn't take it. We couldn't research it. You couldn't have it with you. And I know why. People were using it for recreational purposes. And that got a lot of people mad. Well, they're just using drugs. They're stinking up our neighborhood. They're giving it to kids. Oh, I get all of that. But it's not that anymore. So please, if you can be, if you think it's even possible, try to be open-minded. This is why I call it the high road. There is a better way. Every week I try to bring you an inspiring story about it, and you'll hear one of the greatest, one of the most inspiring stories tonight with Stephen Cochran. But please, if you don't want to try it for yourself, which is fine, at least be open to the possibilities. Because when you open your mind, that's the key. That's the beginning of it all. Thank you for joining me. This is Stephen Cochran and the High Road.